From showroom gaps to new riders. Today's throwback episode is with Teri Lynn from Motorcycles America, and it's a good one. We talk about the real customer experience challenge dealerships face, the kind that can make or break a sale, and what Triumph is doing to help dealers with their merchandising, inventory turnover, and their training. Teri also shares her perspective on the growing ridership, including getting more women and families into motorcycling, the role of e-bikes, and why embracing new segments today builds the customer base of tomorrow. So let's get into it.
Today I've got a special guest from Triumph North America. I've got Teri Lynn on with me, and she is at Triumph, and I'll let her tell you a little bit about what she does, but buckle up. Here we go. Will you do the audience a quick kind of who you are and where you've been, short or long as you want? Go for it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
I'd love to. I'll try not to get too long-winded. So I'm here at Triumph Motorcycles America. I've been here for a little over 2 years now in the role of clothing and accessories manager. So probably arguably one of the most challenging departments in the business. Moving the metal is something that is important to all dealers and of course to Triumph as well. And the accessory bits and clothing bits that come after are a little more challenging, but it certainly keeps me busy. I don't ever get bored around here. So, it's been great. Previous to that, I've actually been in the industry since about 2002. I jokingly always say I crashed my way into the motorcycle industry. I was stationed at Camp Pendleton in the Marines for a little over 9 years. And at that time, I was racing motorcycles in and around Southern California and had a bit of an accident at Willow Springs. And as a result of that, ended up transitioning out of the Marine Corps. And I was really fortunate to land a sales gig with Le Mans Corporation, which, as you know, is Parts Unlimited, but for specifically Icon Motorsports as a product specialist. And that kind of led me into the sales and new brands in the powersports industry. So it's been really exciting. I've always seemed to land at smaller brands and see them through some growth and development of their awareness in the industry. So started at Icon and then followed one of my coworkers at the time to Scorpion Sports. And so Scorpion, as you know, we started as a little helmet company and at the time that I was there and towards the end of my tenure there, I ended up working with Matt Mladen as his final year of racing in the U.S. So that was really exciting. And then from there, I ended up moving to the East Coast and worked with Liat Protective selling neck braces. That was probably one of the more challenging times in my sales career because Liat, as you know, is a pretty fantastic product, but talking to moms about the reason why their kids should wear neck braces because, neck injuries can all the rest of that. So definitely challenged the sales skill, but what a fantastic brand to work with. And I'm still a fan of the brand, but I continued on, ended up doing some time out of the industry as an Eastern Regional Manager for Lululemon, which I jokingly say selling stretchy pants sometimes is more challenging than selling protective apparel, but definitely learned a lot at my time at Lululemon, just their importance that they place on the customer and customer service. And that's really been a theme of my career is making sure that the customer is feeling served and how we can better support that. And I think that's some of the things that I'd love to talk with you today about.
You and I talked about your sort of, I don't want to say introduction, but definitely a scenario that played out for you when you went into a motorcycle shop that wasn't less than stellar, let's call it. Do you want to share that story with?
Yeah, I certainly do. And I've shared it a few times. So I think some of the Triumph dealers that might be listening today to the podcast have heard this, particularly like one of the training seminars that we did. But I was probably 22 years old, living in Southern California. I was stationed at Camp Pendleton at the time. And at that point, I was somewhat transitioning from riding just almost wholeheartedly. I was off-road and I had been riding since I was a kid, but I grew up on a farm. So it was usually ATVs and dirt bikes kind of happened as I become an adult, but I wanted to be able to ride more. So I decided that I wanted to get a specific motorcycle and I walked into my local shop and it had been a shop that I had been to for servicing and products for my dirt bike. So I walked in and I had it picked out and I waited and waited literally just to be acknowledged, what was frustrating. And so at the point where I was kind of over it, I walked up to the sales desk and I said, "Hey, I'm going to buy that motorcycle today." And the gentleman there said, "No, I can't sell it to you." And I kind of got this funny look on my face. "What do you mean you can't sell it to me? I got money, and if I don't have all the money I need, I know I have the credit." And he looked at me just deadpan and said, "No, I'm not going to sell it to you. You'll kill yourself." And call it the perspective that I had then. I think if somebody said that to me today, I probably would have responded differently, but I was embarrassed, I was frustrated, and I turned around and walked out the door. And that was that. And thinking about it today, the amount of motorcycles that I've purchased and the amount of gear and helmets and all of the things combined, I feel like that dealership really lost an opportunity for a customer, a lifelong customer, or at least as long as I was living there and stationed there. And I've heard this several occasions, not just me being a female rider, but I mean, a very similar situation happened to my husband. I've heard other scenarios that this has happened, and not very long ago, literally just after Black Friday, this happened to a friend of mine. And so I'm wondering what it is that's creating this customer service piece that's really missing within the dealership.
Tell me, so, in your role at Triumph, what sort of things are you recommending to your dealers? And I don't know, maybe that's a secret. Maybe you don't want to talk about it because that's what you're recommending to your team, and you don't want others not on the Triumph train, right, to know about it. But is there anything that you would like to share about what you guys are recommending or what you're recommending?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually really excited about it. So Triumph has been transitioning from kind of a methodology that we had adopted several years ago to a new program, if you will. And so our focus really for the last year, even 18 months, I guess, is really a training element. We frame it as train. Realistically, what we do is we bring people into our head office, or we host something off-site. Typically, it surrounds a new product launch, but really what we want to do is get into conversation about a few key things. Number one is, and I think any manufacturer rep will say this, it's about on-hand inventory and whether or not that inventory is of the current year. And so helping people within the dealership identify that, okay, these are Triumph items that you have. These are items that we can probably help you out with, whether it be sell-through, markdowns, working through that. So being real solutions focused about their on-hand inventory. Our goal really is to bring the on-hand inventory down so that it's turning more frequently. And our goal would be within 15%. So the items that they purchase from us, and 15% of that is going out the door. We're never going to be 100% accurate in each individual market or even in a subsidiary, if you will. We do the best that we can with the information that we have on hand. And so trying to see through the eyes of the dealership and the people that are on the floor having the conversation has been a real big focus for us. And then the next piece of it is the visual merchandising piece. And I laugh about it sometimes when I think about some of the things that I've witnessed over the years visiting shops and what people call quote unquote visual merchandising, because sometimes I will have seen a shop as a representative for Lynne, if you will. And then I go back, multiple years later and I'm representing Tucker Powersports, and not very much has changed. And even some of the product is the same. And so it's just interesting what you'll see in a traditional retailer like a Lululemon, if you will, or even a Cabela's. The product is always changing. So every time the customer walks in the door, they see something different, and they get in a very good routine about this is the hot selling season for this specific item. And once that selling season is over, you're marking it down so you can move it out the door and something else will come in. And I think that process doesn't work so well in the power sports industry for whatever reason. And I try to ask as many questions as possible, but really what I've landed on is small businesses, and a lot of our dealers are small businesses, pay a certain amount for it, and they have a hard time marking it down and losing margin because in our industry, there isn't a huge amount of margin to begin with. And so really our goal is to let's get the inventory down to a really dialed in level and just turn the product. And that's been a process. I mean, we've been at it for, like I said, about 18 months to a year, and we're not there yet. And the biggest thing is really getting into conversation with the parts representatives, the general managers, and the dealer, and having them understand that we do have their best interest at heart, and we actually need their help to guide us in the products that we bring in from our vendors overseas as well. And so working together and hunker down, because this industry isn't easy, and we need to think smart and work together to be successful.
And learn new tricks on what's appealing. Okay, what are other industries doing? And I think that's a lot of it, seems like, what you guys are plugging in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a learning experience, I think, from all of us too, because one of the things that we forget, obviously, sitting in a head office and in cubicles, is what's practical and what's realistic within the dealerships as well. I hear it all the time. Hey, I'm running a lean staff. When am I supposed to do this? And maybe that's the next element of training that needs to come out. How do you time block? How do you prioritize when you're in that role where you're holding several different hats, if you will? And, from this point of the day to this point of the day, this is when you do your orders or respond to emails. And, it's pretty easy to do when you're in an office and in a controlled environment. But when you're sitting in a dealership and you're kind of relying on the traffic flow and when it's a little bit quote unquote slow so you can do things, I can see how that's challenging. And so, realistically, it's just, it's a little bit of trial and error and hopefully providing some tools that are relevant to the dealers. And in a lot of our training, when we do merchandising specific, we say all the time, hey, this is not specific to Triumph. These principles are merchandising principles that you'll see at any retail environment that you go into as well. So if you're have another OEM within your store, apply these principles to the product, and your dealership as a whole will elevate, because we can all fall under the same rules and principles when it comes to merchandising and customer service.
I've never done the big trips cross country, and I want to. That's something. Have you ever done that?
So I have not gone across country yet. It's funny. This past year, I took a Triumph Scrambler. So we released the Scrambler 1200 XE, which I thought that motorcycle was just bad to the bone from the moment I saw it. And I said, that's it. I have to buy it, and I'm going to ride it to Sturgis. So I did. Rode it to Sturgis so I could go ride with my mom up there. So yeah, it was quite a journey, but it was interesting the whole time, stop for gas, and people always want to have a conversation with you when you're on an eye-catching motorcycle. Mm-hmm. And that one certainly is. And so the conversation starts, and then they look at the license plate, and then the next question is, you're riding all by yourself? And I said, well, I usually say my stock response is, well, there's not much room for anyone else on here. But, I know what they're getting at is, you're on a motorcycle and you're thousands of miles from home or hundreds of miles from home. And, for me, it's just incredibly empowering and fun. And there's something about being on a motorcycle and smelling all the smells and seeing things from a different perspective. And I want more people to experience that. And that's one of the things that the Motorcycle Industry Council Symposium, the More Riders Riding More, that hit home for me. That's such a part of why I'm here in this industry. And I want to see more people in general riding, but I certainly want to see more women riding motorcycles. And at the symposium, I was introduced to a gal named Elisa Clickinger. And she got into motorcycle riding, I think, after some changes in her life. And, she said, I gained my confidence through riding motorcycles. So she's organizing this big ride across the country next year called the Centennial Ride. And I don't know for sure if I'm going to be able to do the whole thing. I've got my eyes on another ride that I want to do, but she's heading this up. But she does women motorcycle tours, so she's really made it accessible for women to get on rides and meet people and do more of that. So, anyways, I just think it's important for people to take the time to do that. So
great, John.
I encourage you as well.
So it was this neat scenario where my wife, who will ride with me, but really doesn't care about motorcycles, could care less, but she likes to ride with me. And when we go and we're sitting there, her and I staring at them together, it was a neat time that, her and I've never done something like that before. So I guess bravo to Triumph for doing something that got us out of our comfort zone. Right. Even though I've been in this business forever, I should be the most comfortable, but her and I going and doing it was a neat event. I just encourage anybody to look at the schedule, and if it's anywhere near you, go check it out in your space.
I love it. It sounds like you're halfway there to a new rocket, by the way.
Yeah.
Because isn't that what we normally hear? I got to talk to the wife.
Yes, yeah, that excuse is, well, financially, she'll still step in and override that potentially. But yeah, when you've got one layer of buy-in, that might just be enough sort of blood in the water, right? When you're a rider and you want more motorcycles.
Yeah, that's kind of I laugh about that because in our household, it's the two of us are always buying new bicycles or motorcycles. So I don't know who's protecting our financial household when it comes to motorcycles.
All bets are off. Yeah, you're investing on the future of motorcycling, but with each other and your massive exposure with all your motorcycles for at least your neighborhood, right? And anywhere you touch when you ride. So
there you go. We're doing our part.
That gives me a good segue, on getting new riders exposed to it. Now we've mentioned, we mentioned in here earlier, more riders, new riders from the MIC Symposium. But what's your take on? You have definitely a unique and intimate plug into this. Getting young folks on bikes at the level of whether it's the little just able to do a balance bike and twist a little electric throttle. Where do you feel like we're at on that? And are we on a good track and what needs to change to get us back?
Well, I think kids are going to mimic what they see their parents do, right? So our industry is growing, certainly. I think I heard you say in one of the podcasts previously, we're up to 8% of the market has some sort of power sports something in their household. But I think the next step of that is, okay, if that 8%, how much of that percent is just the husband or just the wife, and does the whole family embrace it? And I think safety is one of the big things. There's people jokingly talk about helicopter parents and not allowing kids to do things anymore. And I remember growing up, we'd leave the house first thing in the morning and wouldn't come back until we were hungry. And that might have been lunchtime or that might have been dinner time. But nonetheless, we were outside playing and riding bikes and throwing sticks and shooting BB guns and whatever. It's different now. I mean, we're in more urban areas, and so you can't allow your kid to do that all the time. If you get specifically into the motorcycle world, how can we make that more accessible? And my daughter, because she's 7 now, going on 17, it feels like sometimes, but one of the gentlemen that used to work for me bought her a little Strider bike when she could barely walk. But literally, I have pictures of her following her dad around in a little downtown area that we lived, and that's really where it started. And so fast forward till she was 4, we actually were one of the first orders for the STACYC balanced stability cycle, literally first shipping container. And we were all eagerly wondering if it was going to get here before Christmas. So that's what she ended up getting for her 4th birthday. She's 7 now, and we've put riser bars on it and have the seat as high as it'll go. And she's about wore it out. I mean, it overheats because she has that throttle locked most of the time, which I love. I think it's fantastic. And yeah, she's wiped out. She's had a couple of pretty good diggers, but because of Matt and I have both been in this industry for quite some time, she's always geared up. And I think, number one, the exposure is so important. And then 2, having the kid on equipment that they feel comfortable with. I mean, the STACYC is so light. It's literally quite a bit. I don't know statistics, but it's quite a bit lighter than the smallest equivalent motorcycle. And so that was a really good entryway. And for now, we're eagerly awaiting her her KTM E50, so she can kind of ride in those rural areas. Neighbors aren't going to get mad because they won't hear the bike, and just making it accessible. And we need to do more of that. Robert Pandia, who I'm sure you're familiar with, he has this Kids on Bikes. He's really pushing that, getting bicycles into the school system and at least making it accessible to communities. And I think getting kids on 2 wheels and being confident is going to translate to the power sports industry. And whatever I can do to support that, I'm certainly supporting it financially in my own household. So I need to spread the message more. Even with our own community, we're doing as much as we can. In the spring of the year, I'm part of an organization called Little Bellas, which it's in the bicycle industry, but I really still think that there's crossover there. I'm sure you've seen, if you've visited any of the IMS shows, Giant Bicycles is there with their e-bikes. So there's a lot of e-bicycle manufacturers making their way into the power sports industry. And I think that's the next wave. Even Triumph has an e-bicycle that will be available in 2020. I think we start receiving them in May of the year. So those lines between bicycles and motorcycles are getting blurred. And I think it's just getting more riders riding more. So the MIC is definitely onto something.
The resistance that it's met with by some people with this sort of kingdom game or tribal mentality, it's embrace them, bring them in. Because you know what? I'd like to have one of those things too. Now, for me, it's not my cup of tea as my main driver, but that's, the exposure to the shops being able to be there to serve them for their experience needs. And, maybe these are rentals or maybe they're purchased machines or whatever. But I guess that's my soapbox for the day, and I generally don't do them. But I guess I would only call out that the things you're talking about that are very positive in the cycle space and in quote transport that we, a guy in a shop may not see as a motorcycle. We need to be encouraging of them and embrace every opportunity that exists there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a good perspective. I kind of had 2 thoughts when you were talking about that. First of all, the e-bicycle world and whether or not it's wholeheartedly being embraced by power sports dealers. I can tell you just in my conversations since we went live with it, if you will, which was early on in November, I haven't had a ton of dealerships embrace it, and for various reasons. But one area in our industry that is embracing it is GNCC. They're doing e-bicycle specific races. And I think that all started because GNCC racers could only check out the track. They couldn't pre-ride it. They could only either mountain bike it, walk it, or take an e-bike out. And then born of that now is this e-bicycle class of racing, which I think Specialized is involved in. And so GNCC has had a lot of entrance into the power sports network, e-bikes that way. So that's kind of interesting crossover there. I did a visit through Canada at, I think it was mid-September, and I noticed that actually more dealerships up there had e-bicycles on their floor. And I just wonder if there was something about independent bicycle shops perhaps not embracing the bicycle world. And then when I was in Long Beach for the motorcycle show, I did in fact have a conversation, and I did learn that a lot of the independent bicycle shops aren't really. I mean, they're a bit of the purist mentality. So exactly what you're talking about, that kind of kingdom, this isn't a real bicycle, and realistically, if in my mind, it's an opportunity to sell something and create a relationship, and you create this fantastic relationship, that person is going to come back to do something with you if you give them the reason to, or not. They will never come back, and the choice is yours. So
make your choice.
Yeah, exactly. Another interesting side note. So I mentioned earlier that my husband now works for STACYC, and it's been so hit and miss. And this is just through conversations that we have over the dinner table. It's funny, at our house, work doesn't really go away because we truly live it and bounce ideas off one another. But a lot of dealerships will say to him, no, I'm good. And, the thought process of, yeah, I'm good today, but you're truly going to be building customers for 10 years from now. And I know the incubation period feels like a long ways away, but if you intend to be in business in 10 years, I think the investment in something that's going to grow ridership and get mom coming in the store and get dad coming in the store and now creating this family environment is really important. And I'd like to be able to show them a crystal ball and say, hey, these 10 or 15 STACYCs that you're going to sell today, you're going to, from that, sell this many more motorcycles or this many more ATVs, UTVs. But you can't, right? It's just kind of it's faith in the process. But I can tell you it's certainly what it's done in our household alone. I mean, the three of us now can go out together. And typically our daughter is on her STACYC and we're on pedal bikes. But as I mentioned earlier, we have the KTM E50 on the way, and that's going to be a game changer for us. Now, every single member in our family is on a motorcycle, and that's going to be a lifelong thing.
Thanks again for listening to this lost tape of the Dealership Fix It podcast. These guest interviews still hit hard, and we're bringing them back re-edited, sharpened up, and focused entirely on what matters, helping dealerships like yours improve, grow, and win. If you got something out of this one, hit that share button or forward it to a dealership friend who needs it. And make sure you're following the show so we can keep bringing you more content like this with convos with people shaping the power sports industry. Catch you on the next one.
Still guessing what to pay on a used bike? Still holding aged units that just won't move? It's time for a real system. Moto Hunt's Ultimate Used Book shows how the best dealers are finding better inventory, pricing trades right, and turning used bikes faster with fewer mistakes and more margin. It's short, real, and free to download right now. Visit dealers.motohunt.com to grab your copy or check for the link in the notes.